If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property Experts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy. Hello. Welcome to this week's episode, season 4, episode 9. I looked at season 4 earlier and thought, bloody hell, that's a lot of seasons. It's a lot of episodes. That's a lot of value that Jack and I have added to you guys listening in. And today will be no different. So we have a deep dive session that Jack's going to run through with his top tips for success when starting out in property. So if you're new or you're looking to scale your business over the next couple of years, these tips will be absolutely bang on for you, so stay tuned. For those that don't tune in all the time, in fact, I'll go straight to the agenda. We've changed the way we do these things. The agenda for this week, it's the 27th of February. I'm going to be giving you an update on our Muswell Hill project, which is 9 units in North London. Aura's been growing through some branding headaches over the last couple of months, and I know you guys voted on some logos that we were looking at not too long ago, so I'll give you an update on that. Starting out, ? If this is you, if you're starting out in property, if you've got a couple of buy-to-lets, got some HMOs, want to move into developments, Jack's got some top tips and recommendations for you starting out in that venture. We're hiring in XP surveys and some other positions. So if you are, if you or anyone you know is looking to would love to work with us, then stay tuned to point number 4. Had some bad news this week in St Andrew's Court, so stick around to find out what all that's about. As normal, we've got a 0 discount for your financial accounting software, and then a Q&A with a couple of questions to tackle from last week and the week before. If you've got some questions as we go through this, then drop them in the comments down below. No matter whether you're tuning in live or whether this is a recap and you're tuning back in, we want your questions and we will come back to answer them. We get notified when any comments come through, even if you're back to episode 1, season 1, episode 1. Those questions will come through and we'll throw them into our next episode. So welcome. If you're new to us, we are Jack and Ben, and we are looking to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion in property in the UK. And we do that collaborating with trusted investors. We're sort of a tenth of the way there. We've delivered or transacted on around about £100 million worth of stock over the last 7 to 8 years. And we come on these calls every week on a Friday to distill some of the learnings, the knowledge and the experiences that we've gained running those property development businesses, as well as the service-based businesses that we run, which you can see on the board behind me. So we run an architecture practice, we run a surveying practice, we run a HMO and lettings management company, we run a social housing portfolio, and we run our investment and development business, XP Property. So we're very busy, we're very active in the business and entrepreneurship space, and most people that know us call us ambitious, transparent and creative. We can't do anything that we do in the investment and development space without funding from external parties. So we always have a number of opportunities available. So whether you're looking to invest £100,000 in UK real estate, or whether you're looking to grow a portfolio of £5 million plus, we would love to speak to you, because we always have opportunities across the board. And ultimately, sometimes these things take time. So even if we don't have an opportunity now, if we know what you're looking for, we will be able to put you front of the list when things do arise that fit your criteria. So we'd love to speak to you, reach out to us, and we can book in a call and get a sense of what you're looking for and how we can help. That's the property development side of the investment stuff. We are actively raising some money for XP Surveys, which has been a 5-year business now. And we're looking over the next 2 years to basically sort of quadruple the size of the business. We've got some aggressive growth plans, which I think are absolutely achievable. And we are looking to raise about £150,000 to grow that business by bringing in new sales team, improving our technology, our operational systems, bringing in new surveyors, and all that good stuff. So if you're interested in that type of investment that isn't necessarily property development, then we'd love to speak to you as well. Cool. On to point number 1, which is Muswell Hill and a progress update. So for those that haven't seen this project before, this is a large pair of semis in the North London borough of Muswell Hill, basically just down the hill from Muswell Hill Village, right around the corner from Alexandra Palace. And we started this, when did we start this? About 18 months ago. And things have been delayed, things have taken a bit longer than expected. We've done a 100 square meter basement on this property. So if you tune into some episodes, a year ago, you'd have seen basically the pair of semis up on stilts on acro props with a big void below where the basement was being formed out of the front of the property. And we've converted it to 9 sort of luxury flats. And this is our highest end project that we've been working on. It's circa sort of £6 million in value. We've got some over £1 million or 3-bed penthouse units, well, 1 penthouse unit and a 3-bed split level, which is around about £1 million worth of value. And it's coming along really well now. We're in the final stretch. And yesterday was great to see the progress that they have made over the last couple of months. They've thrown a lot of labor at it to get the final pieces together. We need, sign off in the next month, basically, from a building control perspective, and things are looking and shaping up really, really well. So you can see from the photo that those of you that are tuning in from a video perspective, we've chemically cleaned the front of the property. We've scrubbed up all of the stonework, all of the fascias. It's all new. It's all looking brand spanking new, and it looks awesome. It looks really fresh. Once that scaffold came down, it was super impressive to see kind of what the guys have done to bring it back to life. And the rear is a contrast to the front. So the front is very sort of 1900s Edwardian sort of London vibes, and at the rear we've got quite a contemporary finish with big sliding doors, some zinc cladding. It's a good contrast from the back to the front. So yeah, super excited with how this is progressing. I met Sam Lowney on site. For those that don't know Sam, he's a broker, runs a company called Merry Oaks Finance. We've done a number of deals with him. This was one that he did fund for us at the very start of the project. So it was great to show him around, show the progress that we've made to the completed article. And he runs the Property People podcast. So head over to tune into that. His format is basically sitting down with other developers in the space, discussing their story, where they've been, what they're doing, where they've come from, how they do it, the challenges, the learnings, all that type of stuff. So some amazing guests that he's had on that podcast, including Jack and I a couple of times. Some really great insight into what the world of property development has to offer. So if you aren't already subscribed to the Property People podcast, head over there as well and subscribe. So yeah, any questions around this project, let me know. We're almost there now. We will be running a site tour to this project at the end of April, or some date TBC, but it will be mid to late April. If you want to get on the waiting list for that site tour, drop a comment, site tour down below, and Heather or one of the team will contact you, and we can get you on that waiting list. We're not going to be, we're going to be relatively selective with numbers. So make sure you get on that waiting list ASAP. Cool. On to Aura and a bit of a branding update. I should have put this on there actually. We had 6 or 7 logos from just before Christmas that we were looking at in terms of rebranding and bringing in a new logo suite and a new branding suite. I've sort of changed tact, to be honest. I saw those logos. Nothing really stood out to me as anything better than we've got, or something that really I felt. I think when you're doing this type of stuff and you're working with graphic designers and they give you loads of options, you almost know which one, which one's right when you see it. And none of the ones that we had available to us really stood out as like, yes, that's the one. And I remember 10 years ago when I had a graphic designer looking at Aura architecture back in the day, or Aura Homes as it was then. And when this one came up against the rest of them, this was one that I was like, I like that. I can see, that is the one. I can see it moving forward. So I'm just not going to change it. But what I am going to do is to redesign the look and feel of the website, keeping the same kind of branding colors and logos, but basically changing the imagery and the way it's presented and all that sort of stuff. But we are also splitting out our developer side of the business. So we currently have 3 sort of services that we offer. It's architecture, it's interior design, and it's basically development architecture for developers. And it's become quite challenging to be presenting both sides of the coin on social media and in marketing material, because those that are doing homeowner projects in London, for example, don't really give a crap about the developer side of stuff and the fact that we're adding £1 million worth of value to a development, or we've got class MA PD rights conversion on an office conversion, that's not really of interest to homeowners. So we are going to be separating the two. The developer side of the website, well, will have a new domain name, it will have a new sort of structure, it will have a new brand identity, and this was basically me asking ChatGPT to help me out. I uploaded our logo. I said, look, at the moment we've got the residential side of things for homeowners, which is Aura Architecture and Interiors. I want to split out Aura for developers, and then ultimately at some point we're going to be breaking out the interior design part of the business into a standalone entity as well. So I wanted them all to kind of work together. We've got the gold and blue, which is the standard logo, the existing logo. ChatGPT came up with like a darker navy blue with a copper for the developer side of things, and then this sort of darker grey blue with the champagne, as it said, as ChatGPT described it, champagne color for the Aura and Interiors, with more like a softer palette that's a little bit more interior design focus. So this might not be exactly where it ends up, but it's the sort of direction of travel that we're at. And I just wanted to plug ChatGPT again, like we did last week for CGIs. It's been extremely useful to get to this point. It generated these images by just me telling it I want it to generate me some images that show the three side by side. Through this process, I got it to compare side by side different colors, compare them with the existing logo, see how it compares and contrasts. Suggests, asking it why it thinks certain elements are right for the different pieces. They were sort of saying development needs to be more commercially minded, more, a bit more corporate, that type of thing, whereas the interiors need to be a bit more softer. So yeah, you don't really need to necessarily get a graphic designer on board anymore now. I think for the sake of $20 subscription to ChatGPT or Grok or whatever it may be, you can pretty much do a lot of this stuff without bringing external parties on board. So yeah, that's the branding update.
Love it.
Yeah.
Starting out. So this was actually kind of like a question, but I thought it was too much information to jam pack in the Q&A at the end of the session. And Ben, dive in whenever you feel appropriate to sort of, I suppose, govern people. But essentially, I wanted to do a section on, let's assume you're a chippy, or maybe even you're a project manager, or you're coming out of education, or even you're in your full-time career and you want to move more into property. Hopefully this section will enable you to forecast a little bit more of an idea of a plan. I'm a big believer that the foundations of a property are set out once you've designed the end goal. So first off, you need to get your goals set up and pulled together. So what does that look like? 3-year, 5-year goals, transitioning between whatever you're doing now and what you want to be doing, and map out that journey. But I think the real burning question from Harry, who actually asked me on Instagram, like where or how to start up, is ideally it's probably the hardest decision you will make, because there's so many decisions we make now in our business which don't actually drastically change the bigger, wider picture, because we're already fluid, we're already growing, we've got a team that manage certain things, and we can pivot a lot easier into different things, different ventures. We can lean on other businesses, other resources. So I think it is the most important decision to get a strategy together from the outset. And hopefully there's some ideas that can come off the back of this section for the listeners. I've broken it down into like a few sections, like first stage, what your profession might be now, and some ideas of what you could potentially go into, considerations for strategies, considerations for your lifestyle, which is quite important. I know people that run really successful lifestyle businesses that don't want to scale. So the answer to your queries is, don't go out and try and set up a business like us. Go out and set up a business that you want to build, because without that intention, you will probably end up building something that isn't quite catered for what your lifestyle or what your current requirements specifically are. And that is obviously what will hopefully lead you to success, or classic phrase, sacking the boss, and getting into a position where you can work in real estate, and that can be a big part and benefit you in your life. So next slide, Ben. So the first thing I actually wanted to run through is the established nature between nature and nurture. So your nature is what your hereditary typical profile is as a person. And the nurture is obviously what you typically may learn in a professional environment or a career. These are two really important things. And if you are watching on YouTube, you will see that I've actually uploaded a wealth dynamics test that I did in 2020, which shows my personality profile, which is actually fairly similar to Ben's, as a nature perspective. So this isn't what we've particularly learned in the industry. And where this is really relevant is my main job in our businesses is to create deals, typically the front end of sales. If you can see, it's really super small writing, but in the bottom right-hand corner of my wealth dynamic is deal making. So this Q&A that I did to get this personality test almost suggests that I'm not a trader deal maker profile, but that can fall in my nurture profile. So your nurture profile is things that you have learned in the industry. It might not necessarily be something that you're naturally good at. It might just be something more knowledge based. And to give you a bit of an idea of what that might mean is my nurture background is sales. I have been working in sales for probably 6 years before I went into property. And that's, almost 17 years ago. And all my sort of late teen childhood, I was trading things. I built up nurture acumen of how to trade things. And I got a real buzz from that. But that is not my nature of my profile. So the reason why I think this is really important is you need to understand your professional capacity and what you've learned to date, depending on where you're at. You might have been just studying in university, you might be on site on the tools, or you might even be a solicitor. Some solicitors might be creator style mechanic like me, but their professional practice means they're probably quite good from a legal standpoint. So that would, in my opinion, would enable you to understand and where you would best see value in you within the career or growth within property. So I love sort of distinguishing the two between this. So what I'm getting at is my nurture has built me into quite, I would say, fairly skilled negotiator and acquirer. But my profile is I'm typically I actually think I'm probably more mechanical driven. Like I need to see the numbers. I need to understand the numbers of things. But I'm comfortable being the face of a business. That's my creator star mentality. So my nature is your natural personality, and then the nurture is your skill set. If you ever see like those shows where people get stuck on an island, you really clearly see people's personalities come through and drive through in those programs. And that might be people that are quite quiet and happy doing their own thing and staying in their own lane. There might be people that are natural leaders. You don't necessarily have to go out and do all these dynamic tests, but it's good to think about it. What is your natural skill set? Because if you are going, fish out of water, if you're going from IT to property, you may be then relying on your nature of your personality. Ben's just uploaded his profile. Was this the 2020 as well?
2024 this was.
Cool. Yeah, I did a 2024 and mine actually shifted a bit. I've changed apparently. But you're similar to me. I'm a little bit more of a deal maker trader than you. But you're basically creator style mechanic as well. And if you haven't seen these talent dynamics, this is actually from Roger Hamilton's, who's a billionaire actually, who wrote a book called Your Life, Your Legacy. If you're listening to this and you're not in property at all, you're not in business at all, it's a really interesting book because it analyzes really successful people who have lent into their profile to ensure that they have been a success and done what they're best at. This is one you can do. I think it's 100 quid. There's other free ones you can do online. But I really do love dynamics tests. And actually, if you look at the bottom section of this profile, it's called a tempo personality, which is typically someone that does really well in sales. They're typically highly motivated, highly driven, quite short attention span. They just want to get deals over the line. They churn through deals. If you try and give that job title to a steal, who is someone that's very accumulative, data driven, quite slow, very methodical, they're not going to get sales over the line. But both these personalities are essential in a business. You actually need a well-rounded team that offer all of these things. Another example on the right-hand side, which is a blaze, is typically people that are good with people. And my wife is actually a blaze. And funny enough, she's a personal trainer or a group personal trainer. So she's lent into her skill set of being able to support others to get the best out of the group. Whereas Steels don't want to be part of a group. They just want to do their job and leave the office when they need to leave it and do it really well. And they don't typically integrate well often with teams. So understanding this dynamics for you before you go, right, I want to do this strategy, I think is really important. So to give you an example, a tempo personality is fast paced, next deal, next deal, next deal, quite transactional. They would be well suited for service accommodation. A steel personality would probably be more suited to something a little bit more slow paced, methodical, detail driven, and less about the churn. And that is a synopsis of personality-driven decisions to go into particular strategies. And the reason that I'm saying this is because then you're not typically potentially working against the grain of your natural skill set, but also getting the most value in the market space. If you go into a completely different area, you might not be achieving the most value that you can. And that is for you specifically. We also have some of our team members do these tests. I'd recommend reading the book, Your Life, Your Legacy. It was one of the first entrepreneur books that I read and loved it. I suppose if we're talking about starting out, you should probably read the cliche Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Mr. Kawasaki, as I call him, which is basically understanding about assets, liabilities, and various different things and why building wealth. So there's 2 book recommendations there for you. But I thought that would be a good place to start. And where I'm going to contradict this is a lot of people have skills and value in the market that might be under their nurture profile. So a slightly different, where it's practical experience in the market space. Like for an example, let me think about something that I have experience managing people, but I'm not a Blaze. I'm typically not a person that listens to a lot of talking without a lot of action. And that typically is sometimes bad for managing people, but I've nurtured skill sets to manage people and understand them and hear them out and work to their requirements and requests to grow that team. So that was point number 1. I wanted to make sure you understood you and could help you foster that goal and strategy plan. Anything else on profiles, Ben?
No, I think there's so much to it, to be honest, that you sort of need to dig into the detail. But if you're looking at our business in XP, I want my project managers to be a tempo, basically, where they get into the groove of things. They're well organized, and once they've got a process, they can just keep following that process and delivering upon it, basically. So you kind of want a bit of everyone in your business. The whole point of growing a team is that you're looking at this and thinking, I need somebody kind of all in each of these areas. Basically, you want somebody in finance in your team. In the legal part of it, we've got Tess, who's, she hasn't taken one of these tests, but I'd imagine she's a steel stroke tempo, where basically she's very efficient. She cracks on, she gets stuff done. She likes to get into the detail of the finance, the legal side of stuff. And you need somebody like that. On the sales side with XP Surveys, you really want a Blaze stroke tempo, because they're the good ones that are building good relationships with people from a sales perspective. Like Jack says, kind of picking up the phone, following that process, being really organized and trying to get sales over the line. Both Jack and I are very, very much dynamo, which you often find entrepreneurs are, because it's the creative side of things. It's the, can get a little bit shiny penny, because it's sort of, you want to move on to the next thing. You get 95% complete on something, and you don't want to finish the final 5%. That's for somebody else to do, but the bulk of the work is done, which is the important bit, which is the idea, and that's where you as the dynamo sort of creator comes in. So yeah, there's loads to it, and I think it's well worth everyone doing some sort of test like this. There's a few other ones in the market within the property space. This wealth dynamics one is one that is used quite regularly. It's the one that the property entrepreneur people push as well. And I think we did this originally for maybe under Progressive way back when. But yeah,
I think we actually went to a Roger Hamilton event.
Oh, we did. Yeah, true.
Yeah, very cool. Next port of call is to think about the strategy that you would like to focus on. Ben mentions shiny penny, and a lot of people see the glitz and glamour of a strategy, but don't actually think about how that caters for your situation and your personality and profile, time allocation, and ecosystem. What I mean by ecosystem is it's great if you can complement strategies together. We actually did an episode probably 3 episodes ago, Ben. Can you have a quick look, see which one that is? Because we went through every strategy, the pros and cons. And I would highly recommend you go and watch that episode or listen to that episode. But going into detail around this today is I'm going to try and give some specific case studies of where you might be in your life or your process of getting into property. I'm going to go through how some of them offer different things, but I'm going to try and not repeat myself on that episode because it is quite a detailed episode about those strategies. So go and listen to that episode. But starting off with development.
Yeah, season 4, episode 5.
There you go. So if you go and watch that, we go into detail about the pros and cons in each strategy. And what I'm looking at here is longevity, to something that you can focus on and scale if that's what you want to do. The actual requirement. So when you're looking at buy-to-lets, they don't yield the same or cash flow the same as HMOs do, but they're a lot less work. So if you're a lawyer in central London, you're on a really good salary, you're getting paid really well, and actually you don't want to give up that work for over maybe 10, 15 years, you might not actually need that cash flow build. You might just want an asset and capital value base that you're building over time that is less aggravation. So time is a really, really key one for the noisiness of the business. So longevity, cash flow, time allocation is something to consider. Obviously risk. Some projects are riskier than others. If you're unemployed, you're sat on a nest egg of 100 grand and you want to do a development, there is potential that 100 grand might be completely wiped out if you completely cock it up. But if you invested that into a buy-to-let property and made 500 quid a month net, there's less risk on that project for the obvious reasons. There's already a property there. If you do the right conveyancing and DD on the property prior to buying it, you would like to think your investment is a more secure investment against taking acquisition risk, ground risk, planning risk, development risk, sales market risk, delay risk, which obviously if you delay a project like a development and you can't get rid of the units, the finance eats into your profit margin and maybe even equity. So these are risks that need to be considered. So risks is another factor. And then ecosystem kind of feeds into longevity. I don't think it's worthwhile doing 2 HMOs and stopping there. I think HMO business is best as a scalable business model. Buy-to-lets is slightly different. I don't see any harm in doing 1 or 2 buy-to-lets and seeing how you get on, but it also is a scalable business model. The cash flow isn't as good as other strategies, therefore the recuperation of the cash flow might be a little bit more difficult, but that's my particular view. If you look at developments, it is a scalable business model. It's quite difficult to, it's kind of like whale hunting against the sort of shrimp fishing. You know, it's big lumpy sites. You're taking a lot more risk with each site. There's a lot more work that goes into it and management. So therefore it's quite a higher risk strategy and does take time. So depending on your situation, have you got an income stream? Have you got time to focus on developments? And that's actually similar to commercial conversions. I love HMOs and always will. I think they're a great business model to build cash flow in, to maybe quit your job or scale back your hours to then focus on other business strategies. I'm a bit of a naysayer about service accommodation just because I don't see it as a hugely scalable business model. I know quite a few service accommodation operators. I think that at some point there should be some legislation coming in or compliance coming in for sure. But as a cash flow business, if you are, like Ben said, a tempo personality, it's a great strategy to get into because it's typically higher cash flow. The more noisier businesses, often the more cash flow it will generate. And then you've got land, which does take a significant amount more of time. So if you are that busy 9-to-5 person in the week in your job, there's no harm in seeing if you could get sites under option to take through the process of getting planning. So all of these considerations, so scalability or longevity, feeding into an ecosystem or within your business, the time allocation that you can put into it, the actual cash returns, the risk returns, and then also the stress returns. Risk is different to stress. Service accommodation is fairly low risk to rent out a unit per night, but it's quite stressful because you might get a call at midnight because the shower's not working. That's less frequent in buy-to-let properties. They'll probably wait until the morning. They know that they've been living there 8 months, so they're not going to try and dock the rent if you manage to get it sorted out fairly promptly. And this is the sort of things and considerations that you need to make within the business. So this is strategy stuff, and I'm going to come on to the service-based businesses and how you can get into those strategies, because you don't have to be a landlord in development, commercial conversion, service accommodation, buy-to-lets and land. You could be a consultant. You could add value in the market space. There's no reason you couldn't start an interior design business or a surveying business or a compliance business. And all of these service-based businesses need to be also considered when looking at the bigger projects like these. And we've always said, first port of call, if you're moving into any business, focus on cash flow. There's three things that you mainly consider. I call it the triangle of business, which is risk, profit, and cash flow. These are three areas that need to be managed subsequently. All of these strategies have different levels in those triangle sections. But one thing you should always consider from the outset is ensuring you build and ingrain really good cash flow into a business. Sometimes that never goes away. Most businesses I know businesses that are much larger than ours still have cash flow problems. But focus on the cash flow first, because that is what fuels the personal life, fuels the growth, fuels the reinvestments, so that you can go into whatever strategy you're focusing on. And the reason I mentioned all those potential ideas of interior design or whatever it may be is you can then focus on the longer term strategy feeding into the short term strategy. Things we haven't got in here which are also relevant is house flipping. I think if you're a tradie on site, one of the best strategies you can do is flip houses, because you're on site, you can manage them, you know the trades, you probably worked alongside a lot of them and understand what they know and can do. You might even be a multi-skilled trade, so you could even do more things than just your specific trade, saving costs. And you can then obviously sell the units and regurgitate that investment. And that's actually how I started out, on the tools, then doing my own deals, being on site, and after a few projects managed to get off the tools and scale to do more projects. But everyone's vote of scale is different. So do not think, right, I want to start on the tools today and be doing 10 million turnover in 10 years. It's all around your goals and what you're looking for out of your life, career, support, growth, business, and support that for you. Now's probably a good time to talk through like the different stages of entrepreneurs. So I think we actually pinched part of this from James Sinclair, but the first page is like a solopreneur. A solopreneur is the typical person you see driving the business forward every day, in the business, managing people, clients, might be even pulling all the admin together. And you'll typically see a solopreneur from 0 to £1 million in turnover. It's obviously quite time consuming, and it's very difficult to be a solopreneur if you're already in work. But the beauty of a solopreneur is you understand the ops, you understand the sales, you understand the marketing. You're also potentially building a good cash flow business if you're in the business every day and driving that business forward every day. But the downsides of a solopreneur business is obviously you may not have much time to focus on other business focuses, such as a second business or buying assets or doing developments or things on the side. Our surveying business is a prime example of an entrepreneur-run business. We're actually talking about it before this call. Neither Ben or I are qualified surveyors. We know the product. We know how someone else delivers it pretty well. We know the clients. We know how to operate businesses and focus on all the areas to operate a business. And we've scaled that within almost 6 years to turn over almost £500,000 without requiring us to be in the business. And we've resourced into that business to grow that to where it is at its point today. So that's a typical entrepreneurial business where you're not necessarily in the business every day. And then there's a solopreneur, which is in the business every day. An entrepreneur typically turns over between 1 million and 5 million. I believe once you get beyond 5 million, you're then going into like CEO role, business owner, entrepreneur, and you might then have multiple businesses that you're managing. The reason I'm going through these phases is some people are happy to just stay at the solopreneur level, higher margins, more predictability, less risk, but it is time consuming. Then equally, the entrepreneur level, it frees up a lot more of your time to do asset building and looking at other things that could potentially take your group of businesses, your ecosystem forward, so that you can diversify and even like we've done, apply the same business knowledge into other sectors to give you that bandwidth to manage multiple businesses. Next slide.
Nice.
So let's assume you're listening and you've gone through education in some capacity and you're thinking, right, I want to go into property. I'm going to try and spitball some ideas to give you some help in maybe thinking about what you could do. The first few years of your professional career, I think you learn so much, especially if you haven't gone through to university or even been in a working environment. I think the amount of people skills, time management, personal life management. Obviously, university is a good place to let off some steam and grow up a little bit. If you're coming out into the real world, I think that going actually into a professional role or a job that is within the realms of what your longer term plans are is super, super effective. So I'm basically saying, if you are straight out of education, go join a business that do what you want to do, to understand it inside out without you having risk over your head, and learning from the bottom up. We talked about this on the Ground Up pod, and I actually disagreed with Stuart on this. I believe the best businesses to join if you want to be a property developer or you want to go into a service-based business is to join a fairly small growing business. And when I say fairly small, sort of 10 to 15, maybe 20 headcount, so that you can actually have exposure to a breadth of the roles. So you're not just siloed within one particular duty. So you don't get to see and are exposed to all the different areas. Where Stuart and I contradicted each other is he said he would join a giant. He would start at the bottom of a company like Bewley Homes, and he would go and work for them. But I think once you go into those businesses, you get siloed into a specialism and you don't get to see beyond much the walls outside of that. So my recommendation would be give up your time, go and work for the businesses. We have interns in our businesses that come in, understand the sales, the marketing, the operations, the finance, the talent, the day-to-day management, the operational systems, literally like everything, because we're such a boutique company. And I would argue that a lot of our growing people within our business have a good handle on what is required to run a business like ours. So my first port of call would actually be to go to work. I know that sounds really weird because I'm an entrepreneur, and typically entrepreneurs are flying the flag of go out on your own, take the risks, follow the passion, follow the dream. You will learn so much more joining an existing business that's already doing what you want to do and learning off others if you do go into those companies. And to give you an example, before we set up XP Property, I was actually a site and project manager for an office fit out company. Now, I mainly got a lot of site experience from that, but I also got to learn other things outside of that. But the beauty of working in that role is it meant that I wasn't absolutely grinding the workstone in the evening, so I could educate myself, attend property events, attend property excursions or trips or whatever it may be to learn more. And I just became a sponge. So I think if you're going into this, I think the most important thing is to be a sponge. And another way that you can help that, maybe if you're already in a working role or you are about to start your business, is you can get non-exec advisors and business coaches. But as straight out of education and very early in the journey, I really think getting some practical experience from some firm that's doing the similar thing to you is really, really effective. Even for an example, if you wanted to move into buy-to-lets and HMOs, working at an estate agency isn't the end of the world. You get to view properties, analyze them, look at them, understand floor plans, look at what contractors are potentially doing on properties that you're coming to sell that have been renovated. You're also getting a good foot in the door with your network, because so all of these things, think about what's going to complement the longer term play here. And I think that's super, super important.
Nice.
And then maybe if you are a property professional or a tradie, so I'm thinking carpenter, bricklayer, plumber, electrical works, roofing, scaffolding, glazing, welding, whatever it may be, or quantity surveyor, project manager, architect, whatever finance, property finance, whatever you are, all I would say is lean into those strengths. I talked about nature and nurture. Your nature is your natural gut instinct on what you do within the professional world and in your life. The nurture is your learned experience, whether that's practical or theoretical. Obviously, Ben, if you look at Ben as a prime example for this, he studied architectural engineering at university. So he's got a good idea of design, a good idea of engineering. He's obviously skilled up massively on running a business. That's probably the main area that Ben's had to really learn fast, but he's done it practically. He's been in the nurture environment to run a business. There's certain things in his nature that allows him to be better in certain areas within business growth. But equally, as a nurture, he's had to learn, have business coaches, work around people that have been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. And Ben's been able to set up an architectural practice. He understands the product, the design, the model, has had to understand the sales, marketing, operations, finance, and recruitment behind that, but running that business. And Ben was in the growth mode very intensely, and he's been able to slowly step back and build the team in to continue that growth and margin building within that business. Equally, the surveying business, he then replicated what he had learned. But as you can see, given his educational background and his practical experience on site, he's adapted that into something that fosters growth for his career growth strategy and things that he's looking to grow. That architecture practice, that surveying business, the development company, they all complement each other. There's benefits to all of those businesses being within a group. So this is how I'm leaning into how you could potentially think, what skill sets do I bring to the table? What complements my nature and nurture? Throw yourselves into those, and then always have a short and long-term play. The short-term play might be skill up, get experience, build a network, build a name for yourself. And then beyond that, it might be buy a few buy-to-lets, start thinking about growing a development company once you've got the safety net of income, and start to think about how you can lean into your strengths. I'm a massive advocate on competitive advantage and what you are bringing to the table, because no two people are the same. Now, let me give you an example of the guy, Harry, who actually asked me the question. So I believe he just does bathrooms. So he's basically a plumber, but specializes in bathrooms. But he's been on site for over a decade. So how can he venture into real estate property? He's got his day-to-day income. Yes, he does have to work for that. So there's two levels of income. There's getting paid for your hours, and there's getting paid when you sleep. Getting paid when you sleep is when you build an asset base, which is something that's created. So while you're creating it, technically that return on time is what you're getting paid for, but it's an asset that continuously brings in revenue. So how can Harry think about, rather than getting paid for my time, how can I get paid in my sleep? He could then potentially think about, right, I've saved up a cash pot. I would like to flip a house. I know all the trades to do all the work, so I can probably do it 10% less than Jack could, for an example, because I am not on site. I don't know trades, and I'm buying something that I could buy, renovate, and sell or refinance for the income. That is a great strategy to start for site people, because you're typically looking, your competitive advantage is being cheaper at building. Last week, we talked in the episode how I went to see Stuart's site in Twickenham. We actually bid on that site, but he could bid more because his build costs are significantly lower, because he's got his loft fitting company that can build significantly cheaper. He's lent into his competitive advantage and his skill set. So all I would say is, whatever your nurture background or nature background is, lean into those. Start thinking about ideas of what would complement your short and long-term goals. It is okay to sometimes do something short-term that doesn't benefit your long-term goals. But I'm a big advocate to just dial down on something that fosters growth in both capacities. To give you an example, during COVID, I was selling geodesic domes on eBay. That's not really complementing anything in my ecosystem. Good cash, but I decided once I started getting calls because deliveries were being sent back, and I didn't really want to scale this business model of being a product. So I just canned it off and said, focus on what you want to focus on and lean into your strengths. So that is an example of sometimes you might deviate from the plan to build cash flow. But I'm a big believer in almost orchestrating something that plugs into your puzzle once it's finished, if that makes sense.
Good.
Geodesic domes. And then I will revert you back to that episode that Ben mentioned, but think about strengths, time, risk, ecosystem, and cash flow are really key areas. it is really common. People just want to move into developments. It's a little bit egotistical. I don't think Ben and I were egotistical when we wanted to move into developments, because we could actually deliver developments from the outset. We had the nurture skill set and the expertise to deliver them. But they do, you know, some of these like grand strategies do have a tag on them which sort of lures people towards them. Scrap all that. Think about numbers, time, risk, return, ecosystem, building that career without thinking about what it looks like from the outside in, because that is how you build the foundations of a really strong business. Some of the best businesses in the world are the most boring businesses in the world from the outside. So don't think about sexy. We're not here for that. That can be explored in other endeavors in your life, but just focus on solid foundations of a business, because that will build value longer term.
Cool. Lots of really good golden nuggets there from Jack, and that's the sort of value that we like to bring on these podcasts. So if you are tuning in, whatever place you are tuning in from, please rate it, like it, click the thumbs up, do all that good stuff. We repurpose the video podcast into audio format for release every Monday at 5 a.m. So if you are tuning in on Spotify or Apple Podcast, we are very visual with this podcast. So tune over on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube to get notified when we go live from a video perspective, because there's lots of useful stuff that we share on screen that will help you visualize what we're talking about. Cool. On to point number 4. So we mentioned earlier that we're raising money in XP surveys to grow that business nationwide over the next couple of years. To do that, the starting point and the biggest ROI that we think in that business will be is from a sales perspective. So bringing on board a new sales executive to really get on the phone, get on the LinkedIn messaging, get on the Instagram messaging, whatever it may be, cold outreach to architects, to business, to built environment professionals is what we want them to be doing. So if you know somebody that's been in the property industry, construction industry, surveying industry, architecture industry, whatever it may be from a sales perspective, and they want a new a new opportunity, we are launching this today, if not tomorrow, depending on when Heather's been able to upload all of the documents and the job description to Indeed and LinkedIn. But if you've got somebody that you think would fit our business, most of the team or all of the team, when we have their reviews, one of the favorite things they enjoy about working with us is the team. It's a very good office to work in, good office environment, good business, where everyone's given responsibility and the opportunity to shine and thrive in their roles. And we have ambitious goals to drive XP surveys forward over the next couple of years. So pretty much looking to quadruple the size of it in the next 2 years. So yeah, if you're interested, if that sounds exciting to you, then yeah, reach out. You'll see the posts on LinkedIn or Indeed, or DM one of us and we can send you the job description, job advert, and you can see what it's all about. Just on that, in terms of if you're looking to hire your first person or your 10th person, whatever it may be, ChatGPT is amazing to help you kind of formulate a structured job advert. One thing that we're very keen to do with this role is to introduce certain targets. So this is a commission-based role. So there'll be a basic income of, I think we're putting this on for £25,000, but fundamentally there's an opportunity to double that. If this person comes in, absolutely smashes the sales, brings in more surveys, more architects that work with us longer term, there's absolutely every opportunity to earn really, really good money from that sales commission. So with a sales exec role, you'll have a basic salary, then a commission base. And how that commission structure is set up is quite important, because you need to make it fair, but you also need to make it realistic within the business. So yeah, if you're interested, DM us. And some bad news at St Andrews Court, which Jack doesn't actually know about because it's literally like 2 hours off the press. The planning officer at St Andrews Court, we've submitted a planning application for 2 3-bed houses in the car park of St Andrews Court. That got rejected about a year ago now. We took that to appeal, got rejected, got dismissed at appeal as well. So we resubmitted a new scheme where we significantly sort of reduced the size of it. It's ended up being 2 1-bedroom houses, so considerably smaller. But the conservation officer still has issues with the design and isn't willing to allow us to amend it or change things again. We were lucky that they did engage and allow us to sort of tweak the design and go back and forth with comments, but fundamentally they are still not happy with where it's got to, and they will be deciding the application based on what they currently see, which ultimately, reading between the lines, means that they will be rejecting it. So we haven't got the rejection yet, but it's likely to come. We're working with David Kemp from a planning consultancy perspective on this project, where we will be going in for a pre-app and just actually getting a face-to-face on site with the planning officer and the conservation officer. We did it about 15 months ago with just the planning officer and met him on site, but ultimately the stumbling block is the conservation officer, the heritage officer, and the best port of call now is to get her on site to hear from the horse's mouth effectively, what do you want us to do here? Because we've given them loads of different options. Every time we send them a different option, there's a new reason for refusing it, or a reason that they haven't brought up before as to why it's not suitable. So we do have the option to appeal again, but that took 9 months first time round. So it may be that we run the appeal in tandem, but I think that's TBC. But yeah, really crap. It's really frustrating when you're working on stuff like this that's so incredibly subjective, and especially when you're working with heritage officers where it's very challenging. They're very, very rigid in what they like to see, what they will accept. Fundamentally, we're not even in a conservation area, which is an important point here. The conservation area starts on our boundary, but there are listed buildings and heritage buildings on the front of the high street, which the rear of those properties overlook this site. So we're not even in a conservation area, but we are overlooked by a listed building on the fringe of a conservation area, yet the conservation officer still has lots of issues. So yeah, really frustrating, but I'm sure there's other people going through similar things. Cool. We are redoing our offering from an education perspective, and you will start to see in the next couple of weeks, probably being targeted by some of our new adverts to fill our boardroom sessions. We're looking to get two boardrooms set up for different levels of experience and sort of existing knowledge base. It will be completely refreshed. We'll be redoing how we offer it. Our pricing for one-to-one consulting will be going up this year. So if you do want some one-to-one coaching or some experienced eyes looking over some of the things that you're looking to do in your development business or your service-based business, then reach out now to get the lower hourly rate, because it will be going up very soon. On discounts and things like that, if you don't use Xero accounting software in your business, you should do. It's the best one that I've used over the last 8 years. I've tried pretty much them all at the start, and I've stuck on Xero for probably 5 years now. And you can get 90% off if you use the referral code down below. There's also 15% off Dext, which is an accompanying plugin for Xero, which helps you streamline kind of receipts and invoicing and reconciliation. So yeah, well worth having that as well. Cool. On some Q&A. We've got Jace, who I think I'd love to see the amount of content he's looked at of ours over the last couple of months, but he's definitely our number one viewer at the moment, which is amazing. Thanks, Jace, for tuning in. Thanks for all the questions. It's great that one, you're tuning in the first place, but two, asking questions, because it's free for you to do so. And yeah, obviously there's lots of value that you can get from this. So Jay says, hi guys, how do you approach valuing? So I think this is based on the bank that we just bought. So we bought a bank for 800 grand. We are selling the retail space at ground and basement level for 350 grand. So what we're left with is 3-bed HMOs at the upper levels and a development site to the rear of the property, which we've got for approval for 4 units on. So essentially we've only paid 450 grand for 3 HMOs and a development site for 4 units. So this is where we think there's a lot of value in doing this type of stuff, where you're buying a high street asset with retail at ground floor and upper levels and potentially space out the back to do even more with. So he's asked, how do you approach valuing the commercial unit that you need to retain on the ground floor when doing commercial to residential conversion on the upper floors? Is it actually worth doing these deals? It seems like there's little profit in the commercial unit itself, aside from getting it tenanted and selling it as an investment value, unless, of course, the agent prices it reasonably in line with being a vacant unit. The overall profit on GDV always looks quite low on these types of projects. I mean, maybe so. And the figures at the end may not, as far as I'm concerned, tell the full story. You know, we bought this less than a year ago. We've already exchanged on that retail unit. So we're getting money back in the door very, very quickly at a decent price. And it means that we are buying the full site or the rest of the site at a very cheap price. So for 450 grand, we've got, like I say, three bed HMOs and basically a development site for 4 units to the rear. And in this area, you know, that leaves us with quite a lot of asset for not a lot of money once you get rid of the commercial units. I think, Jack, because it was a vacant unit, so we had to put an assumption on the potential rental income that retail unit might obtain. And then we have to divide it by a capital yield, basically a yield rate. So we, I think, had in our figures 400 grand for the value of that retail unit. We had it agreed at 400 grand, and then things fell through, and the reduced price, went down to 350 grand. But even at 350 grand, it's still really good value for us to sell that unit.
Yeah, I think if I'm analysing a site from the outset, I typically go on Rightmove and try and find similar properties to let, like a ground floor unit. A commercial building is always valued typically on what it can rent for. So it's what someone will buy that income for. When you get down to really small units, like owner occupied units, that can sometimes go out the window, because that real estate might be more valuable to them. What we're not touching on here is also for retail units. There's also an equation to work out ITZA, which is ITZA, which is working out how much retail frontage there is a higher pound per square foot to storage at the back, because obviously it's more valuable real estate. So you do actually, if you have a deep footplate, it's going to be worth less than a wide footplate on a retail unit, because your frontage is the most valuable space to have for shopping, for an example. But essentially, you do exactly what Ben said. Look on Rightmove, look at comparable properties. If they're for let, I would typically take a bit of discount because they're not let. So if they were priced right, they would already be let. The retail market isn't that quick unless you're in really, really good areas. And also, if you're not comfortable with the figures that you're achieving, just speak to a commercial agent and ask them what they think it would rent for. And then you can do your own cap value. So in, for example, central London, you might have a Sainsbury's let out at £50 a foot. You multiply how many square feet there are. Being Sainsbury's in central London, you'll probably get a 4% cap rate. So because it's such a sturdy income, people will typically pay a higher value for that, so a lower yield. Our little tin pot ones in Oxfordshire, we might be looking at an 8, 9, 10% yield for our multipliers, and less pound per square foot rate as well. But good question.
Yeah, nice.
Just before we go on that, actually, where he says there's not much margin, we've done a few HMOs now that are above retail shops. And I agree with you, there's no value in them. So we typically split the lease and sell those off as quickly as we can. Equally, that then means that you just benefit from a straight residential product above, which is typically 2% cheaper than any commercial or mixed rate product anyway. So your cash flow is then better on the residential section too. Or you can move it into a pension, but that's obviously long-term thinking.
Nice. Cool. I think that is a good hour's worth of content. Come to the end of this week's episode. Please do like it and share it with somebody that you might think will get value from it. And until next week, have a good weekend and see you then. Bye.
Bye.